It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here tonight. This is an important subject, and I'm pleased to have the chance to contribute briefly. Can I come directly to your question, but via a sideways step first? I think... Well, I just want to start with a reflection on whether this particular goal of catching Australia matters, because I think it's easily disposed of, but if we don't address it, then I suspect some people will have a nagging thought in their mind, is this really the important goal, and who's defined it for us anyway? Nobody asked me, why should I be taking it seriously? I think that the goal of catching Australia by 2025 is obviously ambitious, and actually, and the next thing that's equally obvious is I think it's extremely difficult to be sure at this date that whatever we come up with, we will necessarily be able to do it. But I'm not sure that matters, because where I'm coming from, I think the simple point is that we do need to dramatically improve our future living standards. I think that flows from what Rick showed you. Whether you specify the goal in relation to Australia, or you select the year 2025, or you use any other set of numbers, we should be trying to dramatically lift our living standards. I think personally that the comparison with Australia is a sensible one, simply because I think in practice it's the comparison that we all make most readily. It's where our families or our friends or our children go more often than anywhere else. These days they can go to anywhere in the world, but more of us think about Australia in reality. So it does seem, for that reason, to be a sensible benchmark. Well, now let me come to Rod's question. As he says, this is the second time that I've found myself engaged in what I might describe as a deliberate effort to transform our economy. And the last time was different. In the 80s, there was a wide perception of a crisis. And I think a clear recognition that the economy had been badly managed through the 1970s, if not longer. Whereas I think that what Rick showed us, we nod at and say, yes, that feels right, but I'm not sure that there's a wide acknowledgement or understanding that we're not doing as well as we could. For the best part of a decade, from about 82 through to about 92, New Zealand embraced radical reform. And I think the overall result, and you could see it in the first graph that Rick showed, was that we stopped sliding down the relative rankings. Actually, that's all we did. It didn't get any better than that, but at least it had that result. Then I think we put our feet up as a country and said that we'd had enough. And today, I think the country is dangerously complacent. There's no sense that I can see of a crisis, or even of a common commitment to build a better future. Plenty of people are thinking about it, but I don't think there's a collective embracing of that goal as yet. Indeed, I think that many people feel right now that we've escaped the worst of the international recession, and that's good because things inevitably pick up. So in some sense, if we do very little, things will get better, which might actually be true. The real question is whether they'll be better enough. I think the state we're in at the moment risks condemning New Zealand to a further decline in our relative living standards, and that matters because while money's not everything, it is the means to an awful lot of things that matter much more than money. A point I want to make now at the outset is the kinds of figures that we've seen and we'll talk about are averages. They mask an important fact, which is that many will continue to do well no matter what. The figures we're talking about, the goals we're setting using them, are averages. Many people will prosper within those averages, perhaps by going overseas or making other choices because they've got the resources that enable them to make that choice. I'm personally concerned for the people whose future living standards depend on the quality of public decision making. In my view, lifting our living standards is absolutely as much an equity issue as it ever is an efficiency issue. The other big difference between now and the 1980s, I think, is the level of openness of the New Zealand economy. The most obvious transformation to make in the 1980s, we've made. You don't close the economy again in order to get a boost from opening it. We've opened it. That particular obvious action's not available to us any longer. Perhaps another way of thinking about that is we recognise then that we live, or we recognise today rather, I think, that we live in a very interconnected world which gives people many choices. But I'm not sure that we've grasped the full import of that. I don't think we have the luxury of drifting happily along. Other countries, other people, other investors, other business folk will prosper more than we will unless we are bold. My view is there's a competition going on here. It's a competition of ideas and of opportunities. Intriguingly, I think it's not a zero-sum competition. This is not a competition that can only be one winner from. We will benefit, in fact, as other countries prosper, but how well we do relatively does matter and is a large part of what we need to think about. So the last point from me at this stage is simply this. I think the biggest challenge we face is, in fact, to persuade people or to see ourselves that what we face is an opportunity. Policies that are too hard, we couldn't possibly do something about national super. Let me not be completely non-specific in this introduction. Or we couldn't possibly do something about public ownership of utilities. That's just too hard. Well, maybe, but whatever else, they are opportunities foregone when we decide something that is too hard. I think we need to be blunt and honest and open about the need to do much better and about the means to do that.